You know those two guys from work who won't shut up about football, but are pretty damn entertaining? Well, they decided to buy a couple microphones. And with that, we welcome you to the Cheesy Corn Sports Podcast, where Justin Adams and Martin Cheney wrangle over everything college football and NFL. Bold predictions, hot takes, and live game reactions. This is Cheesy Corn Sports. And now, here's your hosts, Justin and Martin.
All right, well, that was loud as shit, my bad. Hello, welcome back to Cheesy Corn Sports. We are back after a little bit of a hiatus, scheduling conflicts, upgrading my studio. For some reason, I decided to just want to revamp the whole thing. But here we are. Thankfully, I lost my job, so scheduling doesn't exist anymore. So, me and Cheney can record whenever. But yeah, we're doing the top 24 dynasty redraft wide receiver rankings, switching it up. And yeah, we have not discussed these before. We're going to be kind of finding these out with each other on here as you find them out. So if you like the content, just hit the like button, the bell thing for notifications, and comment with your thoughts. I don't know what those are called, but I will learn them. But without further ado, here's my compadre, Martin Cheney. How are you doing today, Martin?
I am doing good, Justin. I am ecstatic to be back. I am excited to get into some redraft content for the upcoming season. I know it's only June, but draft season is right around the corner as we transition from dynasty to redraft.
100%. And, we're past kind of that lull of the off season where everything slows down, but dynasty. But I mean, even dynasty slows down. But we are at that point where it starts to heat up in everybody's mind. Everybody starts hopping back in the rankings and trying to figure this stuff out right before the season starts. So here we go. I'll let you go ahead and kick it off with your. Do you want to go 1 to 24 or 24 to 1?
I say let's go 24 to 1.
All right,
build that suspense.
Go ahead and kick it off with your first by number 24.
All right. So at my wide receiver 24, I have the Atlanta Falcons' very own Drake London. Let me go ahead and find his stats here because I completely misjudged where I had him. There we go. Okay. Had 117 targets last year, 800 yards, only 4 touchdowns, as he converted on only 72 receptions. I think another year of Desmond Ridder developing in this NFL format is going to be great. I'm not going to talk too much on it because we got a long way to go from 24 to 1. But Drake London has an immense talent at his disposal, and I think he is going to only go up from here.
But yeah, I do agree. I think he's definitely on. I think his stock will rise. I don't think people understood the elite target share that he got last year. So things will improve, and he's in a much better. Mariota to Desmond Ritter's vastly improved. So all right, I will get into my number 24. It's going to be Drake London. The way I see his ranking at 24, either this could be kind of the average, or he could well exceed this, or he could end in catastrophic failure and be wide receiver 45. I do think he's more likely to be on the upper side ahead of 24, but I'm going to put him here kind of until he shows that. So let's get into your number 23, Martin.
At the number 23 spot, I have the Indianapolis Colts, Michael Pittman. He has a new quarterback with a very strong arm, not that accurate. But over the past couple seasons, we've seen Pittman with the likes of Phillip Rivers on very short drag routes, so he had good yards after catch ability. And then with Carson Wentz, when he actually blew up, he was getting a lot of those 50-50 balls, which I think is what Anthony Richardson is going to be throwing a lot of in that offense. So with 141 targets last year, I think Michael Pittman is going to be a focal point for bringing Anthony Richardson along.
Yeah. I don't have him in my rankings, but I see where you're coming from. He's definitely going to be somebody that will see most of A-Rich's targets, but it's how much they're going to throw the ball, how well he's going to throw the ball that concerns me. So I'm a little bit lower on him than a lot of people, but all right. Well, we will go into my number 23, and that is going to be Mike Williams. Mike Williams, for me, field stretcher, but very high risk for not being on the field. He's the field stretcher in that offense where Keenan Allen's the kind of PPR reception guy. You will see him later in my rankings with kind of his breakdown. But Mike Williams, when he's on the field, upside's great. He is getting a little older, so we'll see. Again, just putting him here because I don't know how healthy he stays or how productive he actually is this season. So let's go ahead into your next.
At number 22, I have Jerry Jeudy, another guy that has been kind of hindered with some injuries ever since his rookie season. Did miss 3 games last year. However, with those 3 games missed, he still finished as the wide receiver 22 with only 100 targets. So hopefully Russell Wilson kind of returns to form as he did with Seattle. Hopefully we get more of that type of Russell Wilson. I think Jerry Jeudy takes over this offense from Courtland Sutton a lot more this year, and he's going to get a lot more targets. He's going to put up a good season for us.
Yep, I will have him a little later in my rankings. So my number 22 is going to be Jackson Smith-Njigba. He is the one and only rookie on my rankings. As you know, Janie, and people who watched our podcast during the season, our live streams, I'm a big JSN fan. I don't think the situation he landed in was too terrible because I do think he's good enough to come in and be an immediate wide receiver 2 and also cut into a lot of DK's targets. Would not be surprised if he takes over as the one this season towards the later end of the season. I just think he's that good. But as a rookie, I am going to put him at 22 until he kind of proves himself. I want to see some game action, of course. But so I'm going to put him at 22 for now, but I think he can exceed this for sure.
All right. At my wide receiver 21, this is where I have Mike Evans. I think, going from wide receiver 9 2 years ago, really carried by the 14 touchdowns. Last year, had more receptions, more yards, but a significant less amount of touchdowns. Only had 6 last year. Transitioning from Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield, that's not going to be an easy transition. This is probably not arguably, the worst quarterback that Mike Evans has had in his career. Jameis Winston just slung it free Willy style downfield, which was great for Mike Evans. Tom Brady, precise, great. Now he's got Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask, doesn't help the case regardless. And I think he continues to slide down the rankings.
Yeah. You may be interested to know that he's not on my rankings. So there's a little bit of tidbit information. So we are already conflicting in a couple of ways. So we'll see how dicey the lists get later. All right. So 21, was that year 22? Year 21. Okay. So my 21 is going to be Deebo Samuel. I like Deebo just because of how many ways he can be used. I'm not too big on San Francisco's offense, as they did lose their offensive coordinator to, passing game coordinator, whatever. And their defensive coordinator, so it'd be like that sometimes. But I don't know kind of what their system's going to necessarily look like. I don't know how much they're going to use Deebo. He is getting older. It does seem like he's losing a step. So I do think he could fall below this, but I think this is about right with what I've seen last year. And this is me expecting him to be on the field and utilized a little more sparingly, but just because he's not capable of the same amount. But I do believe he has a lot of upside. But that's where I am on Debo. Let's get into your next number 20, I believe, right?
Yeah. Just a little preview, sneak peek. I do have Debo in this area as well. I'll get to him in a spot or two. But at wide receiver 20, I have Amari Cooper. Interesting stat about Amari Cooper is with Jacoby Brissett, he saw 6 games of double-digit targets last year. With Deshaun Watson, he only saw 1 game with double-digit targets last year. I think the Cleveland offense might be very fun to watch this year. There's potential for that. But that might not be using Amari Cooper as the catalyst for that fun as much as it might be Deshaun Watson running or Nick Chubb running the ball.
Yeah. I have him a little later on my list, but we're very close on him. Number 20, Jerry Jeudy. You showed him a little earlier, but kind of the same sentiment. I do think people forget how good he really is, but rightfully so. He hasn't really shown it up until this point. He's very limited. I mean, his yards after catch has improved, but he's limited upside, and the fact that he doesn't get a lot of red zone targets. I think it's been 18 total, but he does have the upside because the talent is there. It's like we're just waiting for that breakout that just quite hasn't happened yet, but he's still young. And I do think that offense will be better, but I can't put him any higher than this. So Jerry Jeudy at 20.
All right. Moving right along at wide receiver 19, this is where I have Deebo Samuel. Disappointing finish last year at wide receiver 40 in PPR format after finishing as the wide receiver 3. I still absolutely love the way that they use him. Kyle Shanahan uses him in that offense. To be honest, I thought the note about his usage as a running back in his contract was kind of a stroke of genius to incentivize that, because there was a lot of talk last offseason about him not wanting to be used that way. But there's still the injury concern with Deebo Samuel. He played in 13 games last year, but even with missing the 3 games, he was almost 200 fantasy points difference from 2022 to 2021. So with questions at quarterback for San Francisco, not really sure who's going to be the starter there, who's healthy in that regard as well. And then you're adding Christian McCaffrey to that offense for a full season. There's some question marks that need to be answered before I'm willing to move him much higher.
Yep, totally understand all those concerns. I am in agreement. Quarterback situation, I bring that one up, but that's a very good point. All right, so getting on to my next one is going to be just a little bit ranked ahead of his teammate, DK Metcalf. I did say I think JSN has the potential to take over him this year. We did see DK get a little banged up, a little inconsistent. I do think there's the potential that there's going to be a turning of a tide soon, but I think DK might continue to just kind of be a little bit inconsistent. Hopefully he can stay on the field, but we'll see. Of course, he didn't tear anything at the end of last year, so there's really no big concerns there. At least I believe he didn't, right? I don't think he actually tore it.
I don't believe he actually tore it.
But yeah, so I don't like what JSN takes away from him. Like I said, I do think he's going to cut into his target share. So I have him at 19. I almost dropped him a little lower, but I can't quite, I can't drop him below JSN yet. So, and I had to have JSN in my top 24. But DK Metcalf 19 for me, and your number 18.
Yeah, moving right along. This is where I have the other Buccaneer receiver, Chris Godwin. I think Chris Godwin is going to fare a little bit better than Mike Evans with Baker Mayfield at quarterback. Mike Evans is more of a deep ball, 50-50 ball down the field kind of kind of receiver. Chris Godwin is a much more 5 to 15 yards route over the middle of the field type of thing. And that's really where Baker Mayfield, I mean, if you can say he has a favorite spot, that's where he likes to go. Chris Godwin also didn't see as much regression last year than as Mike Evans did. So I think he survives the quarterback change just a little bit better. He's a possession machine, and I think he'll be just fine for the season.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of anybody in that offense. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't think either person made my rankings here. So, all right, on to the next. This is where I have Amari Cooper. Biggest thing with Amari Cooper, I don't like Deshaun Watson. I don't like him as a human being. I don't like him as a football player. So I really don't want him to be successful. So in turn, Amari Cooper can't be successful. Sorry. Sometimes my personal feelings get involved. But I did put him high, even all things considered, because I said I don't love Deshaun as a wide receiver, but will produce. And I expect them to pass more this year. I do expect them to let, of course, him air it out more as he's rounded more into form. And they're gonna let the ball fly a little bit more this year. So I do like Amari Cooper's upside, but I hope he tanks, because I hope his quarterback tanks. That is all. Next.
All right. Wide receiver 17. I have Scary Terry McLaurin. Sam Howell, who knows what's going to happen? We only saw one game with Sam Howell at the helm last year, in which Terry McLaurin did put up 74 yards and a touchdown, 6 targets, 16 fantasy points, finished as the wide receiver 14 last year, and that was with kind of a rotating quarterback room, right? So still had, this is the third straight season where he put up 120 plus targets, which is great consistency, despite all the different starting quarterbacks that they've had in that offense. Talent supersedes the situation for him, and I think it's just going to be more of the same for Scary Terry.
Number 17. I referred to his teammates earlier, but Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen, he is the clear, I think a 20% target share, if not more, 2025, when they pass on third downs. So that is a big indicator of fantasy production. And I just think his floor is so high in PPR. Now these rankings are PPR. So I do think in PPR, he has a high floor. I think he's very similar to Amon-Ra, just an older, more established version. But yep, he definitely will get targets. It's just a matter of when does he slow down? It's coming soon, but we'll see. And we are on number 16.
Okay, so wide receiver 16. I hope people, I wanted this to be a pick that was divided. This is where I have Calvin Ridley. With a new team with Jacksonville, great quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, steps into a system. We haven't seen Calvin Ridley fully at form since that 2020 season where he was the wide receiver 5. Only played in 8 games in 2021. However, was averaging 10 targets a game despite everything that he was going through. And then there was the suspension last year. I think Calvin Ridley now, he signed with the Jaguars early. I think the season was still ongoing last year when he signed with them. So he's had more than enough time to get used to the Doug Peterson offense, Trevor Lawrence working out with him and all that stuff. I think he comes in and he just takes over that offense as the wide receiver 1. Sorry, Christian Kirk, you're still getting the bag, but I think Calvin Ridley's going to get all the numbers.
It's interesting you have him ranked there. It's very interesting. At 16, I have Calvin Ridley. So I am going to just say wide receiver 1 in that offense. Upside's enormous. Offense is ascending. The guy is a huge talent. I don't care if he gambled. Quite frankly, I don't care. Yep, you said kind of the majority of what we need to say. So let's move on to your 15.
All right. Last thing I'll say on Calvin Ridley. Hey, he gambles. He's just like the rest of us. He's a human being.
You should watch a podcast when we're live and putting some bets down. Maybe we can help him win some money, you know?
I'll throw him in the parlay, the old Jameson Williams and Calvin Ridley parlay.
We ain't no snitches around here.
Absolutely. All right. Moving into the top 15 now. This is where I have Chris Olave of the New Orleans Saints. He has Derek Carr at quarterback. Derek Carr put up he supported great numbers with Devontae Adams last year. Chris Olave is, in my opinion, he is the prominent receiver in that room. I know Michael Thomas is still there, but Michael Thomas, he hasn't been the Michael Thomas that we've seen since 2018 when he put up those numbers, right? So this is Chris Olave's season. Already had 119 targets last year, which is just one shy of Terry McLaurin. So he's already at that target share of a wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 in fantasy purposes. Had 1,000 yards. Just needs to get those touchdown numbers up a little bit, and he could climb as high as the top 10.
That is very interesting ranking. Very interesting. Did you cheat on my homework? All right.
Yeah, I just changed 15, a little bit to make it look different.
I have Chris Olave. Again, I'll keep it short. You covered a lot. I think, literally put, I think he has clear top 10 upside, but I am a little more concerned with the Saints offense than I think most. So I do believe that potentially he can be limited in the offense, but I do think, of course, the way he produced last year only shows that he will be elite. It's just a matter of when. This could very well be the season. I could be completely wrong, but I feel comfortable ranking him here at 15. So next, we are on 14. Take it away.
Yep. Wide receiver 14. This is where we're really starting to get into those high-end wide receiver 2s, borderline wide receiver 1s. And I know this is a different ranking because you had this guy a decent further way back. This is where I have DK Metcalf. Geno Smith surprised a lot of people last year, myself included. I had the Seahawks projected to be the number 1 overall pick. Geno Smith comes out, does what he does. Great stuff. I believe that Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to be a great addition to this offense. I have him as my highest rated rookie. Or I'm sorry, no, my second highest rated rookie. We can dive into that in another video. But he is in my top 36 with the potential to go higher. But until further notice, this is still DK Metcalf's receiver room. I think Tyler Lockett is probably hurt more by JSN than DK Metcalf is. DK Metcalf is still 6'4", still 235. That's not changing regardless of who's in the offense. Still a big red zone threat. I think there will be a dip in targets. I agree. I just don't think it's going to hurt him as much as it would Tyler Lockett.
Okay. Well, that's a very interesting ranking you have there, Martin, because naturally I can't have him there. So we finally differ. Devontae Smith is my number 14. I wanted to put him higher, but I hope the Eagles offense progresses, but I'm not sure if it will. But Devontae Smith, to me, has the upside to take over that team. I honestly believe he could take over as the wide receiver 1 in that offense. It's only a matter of time. He is a mismatch. He is so quick, his speed. He has proven that he can consistently produce. A.J. Brown was a little bit more boom or bust, but Devontae Smith showed that he can command targets at a high rate, even with A.J. Brown there. Like I said, I think there's potential he could take wide receiver 1 by the end of this season. Going into next, will be ranked ahead of A.J. Brown. But let's see what you got at 14. I'm sorry, 13.
Yeah. So at wide receiver 13, I have Devontae Smith. I agree with a lot of the points that you said. He's still only 24 years old. He's such a good talent that I don't care who else is in the receiver room. He commands targets. And even with A.J. Brown doing what he did last year, Devontae Smith still finished with 136 targets. Interesting stat, actually. After the bye week, he had one game where he had less than 8 targets, and that was the game against Houston where he got hurt in like the first quarter or whatever it was. Every other game from the bye week, week 8 through 18, had at least 8 targets. 2 or 3 games where he had like 12 or 13 targets in the fantasy playoffs, which was huge. And I think that I don't know if this offense progresses just because of how high they performed last year. It's hard to progress after reaching those heights. But if they can at least like just sustain those numbers, he's perfectly fine. He finished as the wide receiver 9 last year. And I think he definitely could reach those heights, if not top 5, flirt with the top 5.
100%.
I was playing with my buttons here, and I think I forgot to turn the large robot voice off. Sorry. I was playing with the Rodecaster. My bad. 13. T. Higgins. T. Higgins will always be the wide receiver 2 as long as he's on that team, but that is good for T. Higgins. T. Higgins operates better as a wide receiver 2 than a wide receiver 1. It's almost like a duo wide receiver 1. Quarterback situation, great. The Bengals, T. Higgins, I got a little upset last year. The Bengals, with their injury reports, this can't keep happening. If you care about our fantasy teams, this can't keep happening, because if you have any shares of T. Higgins, you got screwed last year, because there were games where he's going to be on the field. He comes out, plays a snap, goes to the sideline. We get 0 points. And I'm forever mad at T. Higgins and the Bengals. So, but I do feel like this is a legitimate spot for him. Again, it's almost like a double wide receiver 1 situation. They both do things well. They both have a role in that offense, so they're better together. Him and Jamar Chase for sure. So, T. Higgins number 13. Let's hear 12.
Yeah, I think at this point we probably need to acknowledge that we're about to repeat a lot of the same names, maybe just in like 1 or 2 spots off of each other. Because
I think there might be
wide receiver
variations for sure, and we might need to argue.
Yeah, and there's one coming up that I really hope we do actually have a conversation about. But right now, wide receiver 12 is the 1B in the Cincinnati Bengals offense, T. Higgins. I'm not going to speak too much on this. You discussed it perfectly with the inconsistency of the play time, not the targets, but the play time. It would be like he was limited all week in practice, and then he goes out, and then on like the second drive, he's like, nope, can't do it. And he sits out the rest of the game. It was terrible, right? But he has steadily climbed the rankings since his rookie season. He was wide receiver 28 his rookie season, then wide receiver 24 the next year. Last year, he was wide receiver 18. So I think he just incrementally keeps pushing forward with Joe Burrow as he continues to get better. This offense is really much the same as it was last year, so I think we're going to see a lot more of it for T. Higgins.
All right. We are very similar here through like 16 to 12 so far, or 13. Number 12, Garrett Wilson. May have him a little lower than most. Reason being, Aaron Rodgers loves to spread the ball out. That's what he's known for. He gets people involved all over the field. I'm not saying necessarily that'd be a bad thing for Garrett Wilson, but I do think it has the potential to be a bad thing for Garrett Wilson. I, again, think he has top 10 upside. Him and Chris Olave are very similar. However, I like Garrett Wilson's quarterback more. I just don't know how it's going to work 100%. But he commands targets. He came out, lit the world on fire. I don't know why people have him so far ahead of Chris Olave. Chris Olave put up very similar numbers with a bad situation. So I don't know why people do that. But I think 12 is comfortable. But again, top 10 upside for sure. Maybe even top 5. But let's hear 11.
Yeah. So my wide receiver 11 is Jalen Waddle. I know a lot of people like Waddle. I love Jalen Waddle myself as a talent. Great. That Miami offense last year was so much fun to watch. The dance, the celebration, everything. The thing with Jalen Waddle is the health of Tua Tagovailoa, right? And Tua started having issues right around the Buffalo game. And so to close the year out, he saw a significant drop in targets when you saw Skylar Thompson come in, when you saw Teddy Bridgewater come in. And so there's still a lot of question marks about Tua Tagovailoa. Like there was talk of him thinking about retiring, or there was people saying that he should retire, or whatever it was. Jalen Waddle was extremely reliant on the quarterback to fit the scheme of that offense. Not to mention that he saw an actual significant dip in targets from his rookie year to last year. He saw 140 targets his rookie year. Last year, he only saw 117. The yards went up because the offense was more suited for the yards after catch thing. But that's really where the target, or that's really where the quarterback, disparity comes into play. I wish Tua all the health in the world. And if he stays healthy all year, Jalen Waddle is, again, he's going to be like the T. Higgins of Miami, right? But right now, he's still in wide receiver 1 territory. So, until, that's just splitting hairs there.
Yep. Interesting ranking. Yeah, there. I have Mr. Waddle at 11. You touched on a lot. Again, quarterback, we know Tua's situation. Tua's brain has kind of turned into shrimp fried rice. But, like I said, we wish him the best of health. I do hope he stays healthy this year. He's my backup quarterback in Dynasty. I think he will be okay this year. I think he will produce. I think we'll get into it in a quarterback video, but I like his upside. Jalen Waddle, very explosive. His acceleration's like nobody in football. When he catches the ball and he hits the Jets, there's nobody going to catch him if he's in the open field. I do think he does have Tyreek level upside, but you alluded to inconsistency. He did get a little banged up last year. I believe it was an ankle, so that limited in some games. But he was very inconsistent based on the QB, which leads me to believe, kind of like we talked about, let's say T. Higgins' health doesn't hold up, then we're in a little bit of predicament with Waddle. Tyreek still going to get his targets. Waddle has not shown the ability to even consistently get looks from them. Like, I understand like uncatchable balls and bad targets, but there were a lot of good targets he was getting and couldn't really actually create much off of him. Was very inconsistent with his hands, dropped a little bit more than I like. However, I love Jalen Waddle as a player. Love the dance, and I hope that offense just lights it up, everybody, because that offense is fun to watch when it's going. So, yep, I got Jalen Waddle at 11. Let's get to the top 10. Let's get dicey now.
Let's get dicey indeed, because my wide receiver 10 is a guy that's finished in the top 3 for the past 3 seasons. And this is where I have Davante Adams. Man, I don't know what the Raiders are doing at quarterback this year. There's the talk of, best case scenario, you have Jimmy Garoppolo throwing you the ball. With that best case scenario, Davante Adams has already come out talking about how unhappy he is with the offense under Jimmy Garoppolo, or the offense that Josh McDaniel is running with Jimmy Garoppolo. That raises some red flags for me. And again, that is the best case scenario. Now there's this talk about Jimmy Garoppolo failing a physical. He has until the season starts to pass one. If not, he's cut from the team. I don't know who the Raiders put out at quarterback after that. So love the talent of Davante Adams. But if you put him in a scheme with a quarterback that doesn't complement him at all, then we could see a serious dip in production and just opportunity, really. And so this is where I have Davante Adams slipping through.
So you'll find a little bit later, I am higher on him than you. But we'll get into that a little later. We can argue, but I really like Davante this year. Coming at number 10, it is going to be AJ Brown. Again, AJ Brown. I was high on him coming out of the last season, but again, the more I looked into it and the more I looked into Davante, the more I started to like a Davante. And again, very similar. I didn't rank him too far ahead of Davante. I do think Davante has potential to, again, be the wide receiver one in that offense. So I think he might cut into AJ Brown's target share. AJ Brown's very boomer bust. That is the one big glaring issue with him, and his consistency ranking is very low. So I don't necessarily think he will be the wide receiver 10 coming out of the season. But again, his inconsistencies, I really can't put him up there with these guys who produce week in, week out. But I do, again, like his upside. So AJ Brown 10.
All right, moving in at wide receiver 9. This is where I have Garrett Wilson, the 22-year-old superstar of the New York Jets. I view Garrett Wilson with the same logic that I view Drake London. Last year, there was just an immense target share thrown his way, but it goes back to the catchable ball type thing, right? For example, week 13, he had 15 targets, and he caught 8 of them. So like a 50%, catch rate, okay, I can get behind it. He did have 162 yards on those catches. Week 17, 11 targets, only 3 catches for 18 yards. That is going to go up with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, right? And I'll get to the Aaron Rodgers spreading it around here in a second. And then, with Miami, 17 targets, had 9 receptions. So, now you put a quarterback in that actually has some accuracy that can actually put the ball on the money, even if he does see a shortening of targets, he's going to catch a lot more of them. So we might see the targets go down. I could still see the receptions going up to include the touchdowns up from 4 last year. And my last note is with Aaron Rodgers. If Aaron Rodgers doesn't have like that connection, the X factor connection with a receiver on the team, he will 100% spread it around. We saw that last year with Green Bay, right? Until Christian Watson started to emerge towards the end, but not really that much. But then when you have a connection like he did with Jordy Nelson, like he did with Randall Cobb back in his prime, like he did with Davante Adams, that's when you see this immense target share go that way. So I think if Garrett Wilson can get on that same page with Aaron Rodgers, because he is by far the most talented receiver on that roster, then I think you can book Garrett Wilson as a top fantasy performer this season.
No, again, 100%. I'm with you on the upside being there for sure. Let me go ahead and get into my number 9, right? I believe so. It was Cool Hand Luke all season. The guy who won me bet after bet on his reception total over 6.5. Amon-Ra St. Brown. The Sun God. Love the Sun God. He is on my roster. He has been attempted to have traded for. I've been offered trades with Amon-Ra St. Brown involved, and I haven't moved him once. And I moved a lot of people. Trade a lot. Amon-Ra St. Brown, again, the reason why I didn't necessarily want to put him higher is because he's limited with his touchdown upside. I think he only had 4 last year. But PPR upside, and again, I think he's just wide receiver proof as far as the target proof. As part of the people around him, he's going to get targets. He's just consistent like that. He's going to continue to get targets as long as he's on the field. So, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I like a lot. So, let's go to here. You're number 8.
Yeah, and wide receiver 8 is where I have Amon-Ra St. Brown. A lot of the same stuff you said. Just the only 2 drawbacks that I have on Amon-Ra St. Brown is the health, because he got banged up with some concussions last year or whatever it was, right? And then it's not the touchdown number. It's not the quantity, because he did have 6 last year. But it's the frequency in the consistency in which that he scored them. He started off on a tear last year, as we can remember, had 24 targets, 17 catches, and over almost 200 yards after the first 2 weeks. He had 3 of his 6 touchdowns in those 2 weeks alone. And then he went off on another little 20 reception, 200 plus yard, 3 touchdown performance over the course of another 2 weeks. He didn't score outside of those 4 games. So out of 16 games, you're only scoring in a quarter of them. If we can get some actual, spread that out over the course of the season, I think he can go much higher. I think there's a chance he goes much higher anyway this year with half the damn Lions receiving room suspended. Definitely watch out for him the first 6 weeks. If I know you might not want to hear this, but if I can, see the future, right? I would love to draft Amon-Ra St. Brown, watch him take off the first 6 weeks, and then trade him for maximum value, because that's when Jameson Williams comes back. That's when I don't think you're going to have that much. You're still going to have good value, right? But you're not going to have that ceiling of value once you add a talent like Jameson Williams back in, who I think he will do very well once he does come back, now that he's healthy, into this Lions offense. That's the only thing.
I just want to counter the Jameson Williams stuff. It has been kind of proven through the years that if a receiver misses this much time, it is the most important parts of his career. He doesn't typically pan out to be a above average fantasy option. I do believe Jameson Williams definitely has the upside. Of course, they use top 12 draft capital on him, but I think he only helps Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't think he hurts him at all, but we'll see. He is a field stretcher, and that's why I do believe he will open up the underneath for Amon-Ra St. Brown. But yeah, I don't think he really hurts Amon-Ra St. Brown at all. I mean, people thought the same thing last year, coming in with TJ Hawkinson and stuff like that, because they didn't finish the previous season in 2021. So 2022, he still proved that he was capable of doing it with those guys in there. So I don't believe that will affect them too much. I do need to pause for a second because I made a mistake. All right, Cheney. So let's move into your number 7.
Gotcha. Yeah, my wide receiver 7. This is where I have AJ Brown. I don't think AJ Brown is capable of really being that wide receiver 1 with the consistency of Devontae Smith eating into his target share. Like you were saying, he's kind of a boomer bust. Personally, I think if people hear someone say that AJ Brown is a boomer bust, they're going to overreact. So I'd like to throw some context into that statement, because I do agree to an extent, right? Last year, we saw the likes of AJ Brown, 7 targets, 8 targets, 10 targets, 13 targets, which is great. But then he would immediately follow that up with 6 targets, 4 targets, 7, 6. And then he'd have another peak game of 10. Then he'd go back down to 6. Then he'd have 16. And then he would come back down. There is a little bit of inconsistency. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a bust, but I'm not going to split hairs over the actual terminology used for it. It's definitely inconsistent. A lot of the same circumstances surrounding what we talked about with Devontae Smith, same thing applies to AJ Brown. So I'm really not going to go too much into that. Back to you.
Back to you in the studio, Johnny. I'm just kidding. My name is Justin. Dry humor, man. It's really not working out for me. You know, I'm gonna take up a new hobby. I think try podcasting on fantasy football with my buddy. All right, number 7 for me, Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs, definitely have had higher on my rankings. Dropped them a little bit as I adjusted. It was kind of like the end of last season, lower on him. Kind of cut back a little bit more steam towards the middle of this offseason, but dropped him a little bit, not far as I had him to end last year after the playoff run. But I just didn't like the dynamic in the end of that season. But the talent's too hard to deny. 28, you know, he's a great QB, clear wide receiver 1, gets targets. Josh Allen, the way he just risk takes by putting the ball up in the air and just, you know, especially with Diggs, that leaves his upside high because you got him throwing 30, 40 yards. It's part of what makes him throw a lot of interceptions, but it's also what gives his wide receivers upside and gives him upside. So I do think Diggs has top 3 potential, but I just am not a fan of the way last year went and ended. So I got him at number 7.
Yeah, and I have Diggs at wide receiver 6 for a lot of the same stuff you said. The way that it ended last season, when we say ended, I'm talking the fantasy playoffs, right? Because he did have 10 targets, 7 receptions for 100 yards and a touchdown week 18. But if you have a fantasy league where your fantasy championship is week 18, seek help immediately. That is terrible. All right? Go join a public league or something at that point. But, right? Now, obviously, there is a little bit of skewered stats at the very end, you know, due to what I call the DeMar Hamlin game in week 17. But even the week before that against Chicago, only had two targets. Interesting fact here, during the fantasy season, Stephon Diggs saw, I think, 7 or 8 games with double-digit targets. The last time in the season that he saw a double-digit target game was week 12. So from week 13 through the playoffs, he didn't see double-digit targets at all. And that's not what you want from your wide receiver 1, especially going into the fantasy playoffs. I believe he's done that 2 years in a row now because I had him last year. And it cost me the 3rd place game in my redraft league. And I haven't really forgiven him for it. But, it's going to be more of the same, really. There's not too much. There was no real difference in this offense outside of like a tight end change. But other than that, it's still Stephon Diggs' show and Josh Allen's show up in Buffalo.
Absolutely. All right. Let's get into my next wide receiver 6, I believe. Wide receiver 6 for me is going to be, you might be surprised by this. You might have some stuff to say about this. Ja'Marr Chase. I am lower on him than most. I do understand the fact that he got 6 more targets than his rookie season, and he only played 12 games last season. 450 yards shy of his last season total. Yards per reception went down. Air yards, very similar. Touchdowns, he would have elapsed the touchdowns. 20.2 fantasy points per game. You know, what's there not to like? Well, I don't necessarily like the fact that he wasn't on the field a lot, but that matters to me. But I do, as I won't put him above Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson, but he will definitely potentially be top 3. Well, no doubt be top 3 if he's on the field for the entire 17 games. But, you know, great QB situation, great offense. Can't take that away from him, but just need him to stay healthy. Want to see it first, and then start moving him up.
All right, moving into the top 5. I want to preface this by saying the entire video, in my head, I've been going back and forth on who I want at 4 and 5, and who I want at 2 and 3. So I'm just going to say this here. So when you hear this name, just know he could very well be the 4 for me as well. 5 is where I have CeeDee Lamb. He saw a great target share last year. Obviously, the departure of Amari Cooper really helped him flourish up in this offense. I think he could go as high as wide receiver 1 this year. Let's put that out there too. All of these top 5 guys for me, they all have a legitimate claim to finishing as the wide receiver 1 this year.
Splitting hairs.
Absolutely.
With a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. So, with that being said, I think CeeDee Lamb is great. Put up all those numbers even without Dak Prescott, right? He's not quarterback dependent, which outside of, I think, Tyreek Hill is the only guy in the top 5 that isn't quarterback dependent. Finished as the wide receiver 5 last year, 156 targets, 9 touchdowns. He's going to be great. I think Brandon Cooks in this offense helps him, if anything, just to draw that extra coverage, maybe draw. All it takes is a couple deep shots to Brandon Cooks, and that safety is going to start drifting that way. People severely underrate what Brandon Cooks can do. He's been underrated his entire career, in my opinion. So, but this is where I have CeeDee Lamb.
You will see CeeDee Lamb a little bit later in my rankings. Right now, we're going to go with that first one I said we're going to disagree on and probably have, a discussion about Davante Adams. Davante Adams, to me, he has done nothing but command targets at a consistent elite level, no matter what, no matter the QB, no matter the situation. He gets targets. Last year, 32.6% target share. Elite. The guy has done nothing to suggest that he's going to slow down. He's 30. I get that. But what has he shown? Has he shown any regression? No. The guy just creates fantasy opportunities. He gets fantasy points. I know we're in an era of wide receivers where we're really, really hyper-focused and fixated on the young elite talent, and we're really kind of sacrificing and forgetting about somebody who had a 32.6% target share last year. I think we are completely underestimating Davante. I think Davante 100% has an argument to. I don't think you would be wrong if you drafted Davante at 102, 103 at all. He's going at ADP, pick 12. I definitely think you draft him before pick 12. But that is me on Davante. I am kind of upset. Where you had him ranked, Chaney?
Yeah. I agree with everything you said. He has done absolutely nothing to show any sign of regression, any indication that he's slowing down. I'm just so in my head over the whole Jimmy Garoppolo, Josh McDaniels, Aiden O'Connell bullshit.
Get it, for sure. But Monte's my guy. I don't know why. Should be your guy. You're a Packers fan.
He's been my guy his entire career.
You're supposed to be higher than me. I don't like him.
His entire career, not my career.
I like him on my fantasy team, but all right. Let's go ahead and get into your number 4.
Okay. My number 4 is another one of those older guys. He's 29. Cooper Kupp, right? Got hurt last year. Matthew Stafford got hurt last year. The Rams offense fell apart. A lot of people have the Rams projected to be like a top 3 pick in the draft this upcoming season. I would like to counter that and say, as long as Kupp and Stafford stay healthy, I think this offense is going to be a lot better than people think. I understand their O-line's kind of but you saw Cam Akers go on a tear at the end of last year, all right? And I'm not going to touch on Cam Akers because that'll be our running backs ranking video. But with what Cooper Kupp did last year, right? he had 5 games. 5 of his 8 games played had 10 targets or more. He was on an absolute tear of a pace. Even with playing in 9 games, he got hurt in that 9th game. So 8 games really. Finished as the wide receiver 23. Still had 98 targets. That's in half of a season. The pace that he was on was matching the target share of his wide receiver 1 season where he won the Triple Crown. So he was definitely on pace to do something similar. And this isn't the first injury that he's had either. He tore his ACL with Jared Goff, I think his second year or whatever it was. And then he came back and he's still great. Cooper Kupp is a phenomenal receiver. I would not be opposed to having him on my roster at any point.
No, absolutely not. And he's higher in my rankings. So my number 4, I misspelled his name, so I will call him what I spelled it like. Tree Hill. Okay. Tree Hill. Pretty sure at the show. Also wide receiver, plays for Miami Dolphins. Again, shaky QB situation. Like I said, I think Tua stays healthy and produces. What else? I mean, what really is there to say about Tyreek? He just a speed demon out there. He's a mismatch, a complete mismatch. If he gets in the open field, Tua creates some time. He can find him deep. I do think he has a good 2 years left of elite fantasy production before he begins to slow down and lose some of that speed and explosiveness, because that's typically the first thing to go. But yeah, could clearly be taken at the 101, and I would not argue with you. But the QB situation puts him at 4 for me.
All right. My wide receiver 3 is Minnesota's own Justin Jefferson. The wide receiver 1 last year. Yeah, I know. And it's more than just what like Jordan Addison brings to the table, right? It's more than that. It's a mixture of that with TJ Hawkinson now having a full season. It is it's Kirk Cousins, playing again this year. I think Kirk Cousins has the same career trajectory of like Ryan Tannehill, right? Where they had like this like roller coaster going up and then they peak at their value. And trust me, I defended Kirk Cousins last year more than anybody. I think this is where he starts to fall off. But I mean, if going from wide receiver 1 to wide receiver 3 is falling off, shit, sign me up, right? He's still going to perform. He's still going to be great. I just don't know if he's going to have 184 targets like he did last year, with a couple new pieces fully embedded into this offense once again.
All right. Well, that's what I heard. Severely upset, but I will argue with you in just a moment. Let's go to my number 3, CeeDee Lamb. Very high on CD, clearly. CeeDee Lamb, I don't feel like he did finally have the breakout we were all waiting for. A lot of inconsistencies over the first few years, but they got to figure it out. He's 24 years old. He's still young, so young. And it would potentially be even higher, if not limited, by the Cowboys offense. I do think the Cowboys offense limits its upside by the style they play. They are very much control the pace of the game, keep the offense operating in a very tight system where they're going to try to be efficient and they're going to try to march the ball down the field, take up clock, rely on their defense. That's just kind of what they do. CD still produced above and beyond, and he had QB, Dak Prescott getting injured. I would never be surprised if CeeDee Lamb finished as the wide receiver 1. I'm extremely high on CeeDee Lamb this year. Probably might get a lot of flack for this, but I'm confident in CD, and I'm not a Cowboys fan at all. So it's tough, but here we are.
All right. My wide receiver 2. And remember, like I said, 5 and 4 could have been switched for me. 3 and 2 could easily be switched for me as well. This is where I have Jamar Chase. Ja'Marr Chase, again, was on a great pace last year. He did only play in 13 games. He was injured in the middle of the season there. Came back, didn't miss a beat. In fact, rattled off 3 straight games going into the fantasy playoffs of double-digit targets. One of them had double-digit receptions, which is exactly what you want, right? So injury concerns, they're not there. Actually only had 3 games under double-digit targets last year. That's insane. Even with only playing 13 games, finished as the wide receiver 12, increased his targets from his rookie year, increased his receptions from his rookie year. The only thing is his yards per targets went down. If his yards per targets were still what they were at like 11.37 as his rookie year, I would have him as my wide receiver 1. But he's not. The guy that I do have my wide receiver 1, if you haven't figured it out, I'll get to him in a second, but he kept that yards per target up. Back to you.
Back to me. We're about to get into Cooper Kupp. So you know who's number 1. All right. Cooper Kupp. Definitely believe that the situation with Stafford, again, is a lot better than people expect. He will have all the targets he can handle. He's 1A, 1B, 1A and a half with Justin Jefferson. These two are completely interchangeable based on personal preference. I just think Justin Jefferson has got a little bit more of that upside of being able to just go up and get contested catches. And he's just who they rely on. And he has the upside of a 2,000 plus yards. Cooper Kupp does as well. But again, I just think Justin Jefferson's got a little bit of an edge physically over Kupp. But I would not be surprised if Kupp crushes everybody in fantasy. It was really hard between these two. I have flip-flopped so much on just these two, though. Either one can go at the top spot. But, yep, I got Cooper Kupp at 2.
Yeah, and finishing it off for my list, this is where I have One Tree Hill, Tyreek Hill himself. And just to follow with that yards per target mark, right? Moving from Kansas City to Miami, he saw his yards per target go up from that 7.8 range, which is where Ja'Marr Chase was last year. And he is up into the double digits at around 10. So, he went up where Ja'Marr Chase went down, which is where I actually had them flip-flopped. On my initial rankings, I did have Ja'Marr Chase at 1 until I looked at some of the more advanced data metrics, and that's when I made that switch. We have seen Tyreek Hill play with Patrick Mahomes. We have seen Tyreek Hill play with Tua Tagovailoa, Skylar Thompson, and Teddy Bridgewater. And I have seen the exact same Tyreek Hill out there for each of those quarterbacks. I had Tyreek Hill on my redraft team last year. And when I saw Tua go down in that Buffalo game, I thought my season was done. And then I see Teddy Bridgewater launch this 50-yard bomb to Tyreek Hill in the end zone. And holy shit, I'm saved. So I think obviously the numbers were at their peak with Tua. I'm not saying they're exactly identical, but Tyreek Hill can do it regardless of quarterback. I agree with you. He still has a couple years left of that elite talent. This Mike McDaniel offense was made for players like Tyreek Hill. And there he stays. So that's my wide receiver 1.
All right. Without further ado, let's get into my wide receiver 1. I want a little bit of excitement from you, Cheney. It is Justin Jefferson. That was really actually kind of loud. I need to figure out these volume controls in this thing before I use it. But Justin Jefferson, what's there not to say? I think the getting Jordan Addison, I think that just helps him. He's going to put up over 2,000 yards. Calling it now. Dude is insane. I don't know why people are flip-flopping Chase over him. I personally don't get it. I don't see it. Give me the 1-on-1. I'm taking Justin Jefferson every single time. So Justin Jefferson at 1. Again, I think he has the potential to go down as top 3 all time. I mean, of course, we all do. We know how great he can be, but he's ascending still, and I don't see that changing. So Jordan Addison's going to open up a little more opportunities for him. He's going to go ballistic. He's going to be the wide receiver 1. Calling it now. Like, that's a very bold take, I know. Just everybody relax. But, yep. Well, that will conclude our rankings. Cheney, did you want to say anything on Justin Jefferson first?
No. I have no hate for Justin Jefferson outside of the team he plays for.
Is it because you traded him to me that now you dropped him?
No, not at all.
No,
I
you didn't
absolutely
trade
love
him to
Justin
me.
Jefferson.
You ignored my trade, traded him to somebody else, and then I had to give them a small army to acquire Jefferson. We're not going to talk about that.
For the record, I didn't ignore your trade. I declined it. I acknowledged it.
Untradeable. And then you traded him to somebody else. So, anyways, but yeah, that was the comeback episode of Cheesy Corn Sports. Little blank wall here. You know, this will get better. But we wanted to make sure that we have, you know, the best quality content out of the gates for y'all. Still a very young channel, still figuring it out, but we will be on a consistent upload schedule. A lot of things happen again, but we got everything situated and we're ready to produce content and running into the season, running through the season, be back on our live streams. We live stream on Sundays during the season, 2 hours before the game. So that's what you can expect. In the meantime, we're going to be getting these rankings up, running backs, quarterbacks. We're going to go top 12 quarterbacks. We're going to go top 12 tight ends, top 24 running backs. So be on the lookout for those videos next. And I will pass it over to Cheney. Cheney, do you have anything before you head out?
Nope. Welcome back to the channel. We love having you all here. And keep an eye out for the next video.
Yep. Again, if you like the content, please give us a like, subscribe, leave a comment, good or bad. We're open to constructive criticism. We're not perfect. So leave us anything, rankings. We would love to talk rankings. We'll reply to every comment. So, yep, let us know what y'all thought of the video, where we can improve, and let us know what video ideas y'all have. We will cover both Dynasty and Redraft. So, without further ado, we will go ahead and conclude this episode of Cheesy Corn Sports. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in for a top 24 wide receiver rankings. Again, you know, follow us on socials. We will get more active with those. But yeah, I have nothing left, so let's go ahead and take it to the outro.
Thanks for checking out the Cheesy Corn Sports Podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss an episode. For more information or to connect with Justin and Martin, check out Cheesy Corn Sports on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We'll see you next time on Cheesy Corn Sports.